How's it going, everybody? Welcome to the 1IQ Sports Talk YouTube channel. Brendan riding solo this week, as I might be doing the next couple weeks, as Sterling can't quite make it due to some work complications at the moment. But we are doing our Week 14 game predictions. And we already had one of our games this week where the Green Bay Packers ended up losing to the Detroit Lions 34-31. So again, since I am running solo, I'm still going to be making my picks. Sterling, however, has texted me his predictions as well, so at least I can give you some of his predictions. So this is going to be a little bit of a shorter video. So starting things off with the Tennessee Titans in Nashville taking on the Jacksonville Jaguars. Both teams not very good. The Titans are 3-9, and the Jags are 2-10. And the Jags really don't have anything to play for. Right now, they're pretty much just playing for draft position. Same thing with the Titans. So this is a game that I could see both teams realistically kind of sitting back going, I would be kind of comfortable losing this game, because if you're the Titans, you're looking at going, I need to get a better draft spot so I can get a better opportunity at getting a quarterback. And if you're the Jags, you're sitting back thinking to yourself, I could be perfectly okay losing this game because I have the number one overall pick right now. And I think if you're the Jags and you have that number one overall pick, you trade that pick away and just get a buttload of picks to kind of just speed up this rebuild as best as possible. But ultimately, looking at this again, Mac Jones coming in, he is likely not going to be great again. From what we've seen, we saw when Trevor Lawrence was out the previous couple weeks that Mac Jones was pretty terrible. But the Titans, they do often allow teams to get in, but I think the Titans defense is ultimately going to be what is the difference maker in this game. Will Levis has had some ups and downs this year. Again, the 12 TDs, the 9 interceptions. He's going to be replaced going into next season. I think that's pretty comfortable for most people to say. Tony Pollard has been decent. I'm not going to say he's been a superstar back for the Jacksonville or for the Tennessee Titans, but yeah, I look at this and I go, man, it's going to be really, really difficult to convince me that the the Jags are going to be able to go into Nashville in this divisional game and ultimately win it. Maybe it's one of those things where Doug Peterson somehow coaches this Jags team up and gets them a win to just kind of get that pity win closer to the end of the year to allow them to not have the first overall pick and basically just say, I'm going to try to ruin your season end plans, kind of like what Lovie Smith did with the Texans a few years ago, which again, love that man for that, for a bunch of other reasons. But ultimately, yeah, I just don't think the Jags are gonna realistically have enough in this particular game. And yeah, my good buddy Sterling also agrees with me on that one, as he has the Titans to win and cover the spread, and the spread is -3.5 points. And on that particular spread, I would have to say I do agree. I do think that it's gonna be a tough uphill battle for the Jags to potentially try to do anything in this game, and I just frankly don't think they're going to have it. And so yeah, that is the way that pick goes. Next game up here on the list is the New York Jets going down to Miami to take on the Dolphins, where it's actually going to be a pretty decent weather game out there. It's 78 and partly cloudy, but the Miami Dolphins go into this one with a -6 advantage at home. And this is a team in the New York Jets where everything has just gone wrong this year. They were predicted to be just this otherworldly team. They were supposed to be fantastic. They were supposed to be elite, and they just haven't been. Last week, it was going to be a good test against the Seahawks team, and they failed. I've just kind of been at this point now where I just look at the New York Jets and ultimately say, I just don't think I can trust them to properly win a game. Yes, this is a divisional matchup, but ultimately, I can't really see them doing much to slow this Miami offense down unless Sauce Gardner really picks up his game, and he's been off this year. He hasn't been that same Sauce Gardner that we have come to expect from the first two seasons, and Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, and Devon Achane are all performing better as of late once Tua has gotten back with the team. But yeah, this is going to be an interesting matchup to say the least. I think the Dolphins are going to win. I think that spread might be a little much unless the Dolphins can just run away with this game. But I feel like the Jets are just somehow going to keep this closer than it should be ultimately. And Aaron Rodgers is going to have a few throws to try to convince people that he's still that Aaron Rodgers. But I do think the Dolphins are going to win. Sterling has picked the Dolphins to win and cover on the spread. Now moving over to the Atlanta Falcons taking on the Minnesota Vikings, going up to Minneapolis where the Vikings are minus 6 point favorites. The revenge game for Kirk Cousins coming back to the place where he spent so many good years. And I gotta say, I think Kirk Cousins has been pretty awful this year. He has not been a stellar quarterback, especially these last couple weeks. And I think you're going to see Kirk Cousins have a really, really short leash. Vikings come into this game 6-6, and they should be running away with this division. The Bucks have been battling a bunch of injuries this year, and they just haven't been able to do this. And you're going up against a team that is playing really good football. They are playing confident football. They are playing committed football. They are getting the most out of Sam Darnold. Kevin O'Connell knows what he can do against Kirk Cousins, mainly because he coached him for the last few years. Brian Flores knows how to defend Kirk Cousins because he had to defend Kirk Cousins in practice. Again, I would not be surprised to see Michael Penix Jr. come into this game this week. The best thing that the Falcons can really do against this Vikings team is throw the ball, but Kirk Cousins, he's an older quarterback, man. He's 36 years old. He isn't the model of youth, and he was never the model of being escapability. And this Vikings team, they bring the blitz, they bring the power, and they attack you, man. And they're just in general a really, really good football team. The Falcons have no pass rush, so Sam Darnold, who is kind of also in that mold of not very mobile, if you don't have any pressure against him, he's going to eat you up all day long. And yeah, I think this is going to be a very easy victory for the Minnesota Vikings. And I think they cover that spread. I think this is going to be a very, very bad game for the Atlanta Falcons. Sterling, he also agrees with me where he has the Vikings winning this game and the Falcons not able to cover. So the Vikings win and cover the spread. Next up is probably going to be one of the more poor games we see this week, where we have the New Orleans Saints taking on the New York Giants in East Rutherford, New Jersey. New Orleans is minus 5.5 point favorites in this particular game. Looking at these two teams, again, the Giants, they're just a mess this year. They are just a very, very down and broken team. They released Daniel Jones, which is what they should have done. They should have never paid him that much money. They really just can't get anything going. This Saints team has had a little bit more life ever since firing Dennis Allen, so they have looked a little bit better for sure. And Derek Carr, he's not throwing interceptions, so yay, but he's also not giving you an insane amount of production. Kareem Hunt, he's been battling an injury all season and hasn't looked the same other than those first couple of weeks. But ultimately, the Saints team, I think they're just going to have a little bit more in this particular game to ultimately beat the Giants. I don't think this is going to be a stellar game for either team. I think the Giants defense while it is the best part of their team, it's not as good as we initially thought they were going to be this year, and they've definitely been a little bit more tired. But I do think the Saints are going to not run away with this game, but they're going to control it and they're going to win it. And I do think the Giants are actually going to keep it close enough to cover that 5.5 point spread. I just think at home the Giants are going to be just potentially slightly harder to beat. And the Saints, again, they're a bad team. So when you have bad teams going up against each other, interesting stuff happens, man. It you can't count out one bad team beating another bad team at any given moment. And Saints, in Sterling's prediction, he has the Saints winning the game, but like myself, he also has the Giants covering that 5.5 point spread. Now moving forward to the Eagles taking on the Carolina Panthers. Now the Carolina Panthers have been much better of late, but the Eagles have been an otherworldly team. They might have the MVP in Saquon Barkley this season. The dude has just been so unbelievably amazing throughout the entire year. And the Eagles at home are minus 13.5 point favorites. And I gotta say, I think that is a very, very comfortable point spread. Panthers and Bryce Young have looked slightly better these last few weeks. And Bryce Young is starting to show a little bit of life of him actually being a competent quarterback. I'm still not convinced that he's ever going to be much more than just a top 25 quarterback in the NFL. Time will have to really tell with that one. I think year 3 is going to be important for the Panthers to really determine if Bryce Young is going to be the guy. But this is not a game where you are expecting him to do much. This Eagles team, they are playing a different brand of football right now. They are playing confident. They are playing otherworldly football. They are right now, I think, the only NFC team that you could say could compete with the Lions. The Eagles defense is phenomenal. Jalen Carter is playing like one of the best defensive tackles in all of football right now. And then their cornerback room with Cooper DeJean, Reed Blankenship, and Quinyon Mitchell are just taking over, man. And it is such a fun unit to watch. And they have been very, very good. And then their offense, like, there is nothing that the Panthers can do, in my opinion, that is going to be able to stop Saquon Barkley. I think Barkley is going to just absolutely dominate in the run game, and we're going to see Jalen Hurts just kind of continue to do what he's been doing these last few weeks. The point that we don't even have to talk about Jalen Hurts in a way that we haven't this year just shows how good Saquon Barkley has been. I think the Eagles easily win this game, and I think they easily cover that spread. I just don't think the Eagles are going to, or the Panthers, I should say, are going to do anything of note to really be able to ultimately compete in this game. Next game up on the docket, we have the revenge of a couple of weeks ago where the Cleveland Browns head into Pittsburgh to take on the Steelers. And the Pittsburgh Steelers are minus 6.5 point favorites in this one. This is an interesting game to say the least, because the Browns have played really good football these last few weeks. Again, the record is 3-9. I think this is one of those teams where you sit back and say, I don't think the record is indicative of how good or bad this team is. Went up against the Broncos last week, and they played an absolute barn burner, and Jameis Winston, again, had the 2 pick sixes in the game, which really cost him, so he's going to need to keep the turnovers low. But you go to the week prior, he was stellar against this same Steelers team in just a terrible snowy weather game, and the Browns defense really started to force that Steelers offense to struggle a lot more. It was a very, very entertaining game. But a stat that I also was able to see this morning is that the last time the Cleveland Browns went into Pittsburgh and won a game during the regular season, the last quarterback to do that was Tim Couch. Now, for the people watching this video, If you don't know who Tim Couch is, go Google it. I think he played in like 2008, around that time. I could be wrong. It might have been a little bit sooner, but it has been a long time for the Browns to actually go into Pittsburgh and win a regular season game. Now, they did win a playoff game in Pittsburgh with Baker Mayfield back in 2020, but they don't have Baker Mayfield right now, and they don't have that same level of team. I think this is going to be a close game because NFC North games are always close. They're always a absolute grind. They're always an absolute battle. I think the Browns will keep this close, but I don't think they will do enough to ultimately walk away with the victory here in this game. And I think the Steelers get the revenge game and do get this victory, but it's not going to be pretty. It's likely going to be a defensive win. And I think this is going to be a fairly entertaining game. Steelers win, Browns cover. And taking a look at Sterling, he agrees with me. He thinks the Steelers are going to win. He always thinks the Steelers are going to win, so, take that with a grain of salt. But he does think the Browns are going to cover. That 6.5 point spread. The Las Vegas Raiders head down to Tampa Bay to take on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And the Bucs are minus 6.5 point favorites at home against the Raiders. Raiders at this point, they're eliminated from the playoffs. They need to lose out. They need to try to get that first overall pick because I think they need to at least have the option to draft any quarterback that they want. I did a mock and I'm likely going to release it here in a couple of days throughout the week. So stay tuned for that. But I do think that the Raiders, they need to control their destiny and have the option at any of the quarterbacks. They can't look at it and go, we hope that if we're the second or third pick, that the team in front of us or the teams in front of us don't take either the quarterback that we want or the quarterbacks that we want, because this Raiders team, they are an absolute mess. They're an absolute dumpster fire, and they need to get a quarterback. Luckily for them, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are looking at this going, if we win this game, we are now the leader in our division. Baker Mayfield has played very good football this year. Now, he does have 11 interceptions, but ultimately, I think he's one of the more of those classic gunslingers that is willing to kind of take some of those higher interceptions to put up some really good numbers, and he's done a really good job this year, and I think he fits that culture in Tampa Bay really, really nicely that they're trying to build. The biggest thing that the Buccaneers need to stop is Brock Bowers. If you can't stop Brock Bowers, then you really don't have, or you're putting yourself in a really poor position in this game. I don't know if Aiden O'Connell, I'm pretty sure Aiden O'Connell is going to be the starting quarterback for the Bucs in this game. But that Raiders defense, man, other than Max Crosby, they're pretty bad. And so I do think the Bucs will be able to win this game, and they should be able to cover that 6.5 point spread. The Raiders are just a mess. They are just, at the end of the day, a horrific mess. And taking a look at this, Sterling agrees with me. He's taking the Bucs and he has them covering this game as well. The Raiders right now are playing for draft position, and that's pretty much the biggest thing that they are going for here at the moment. Going to our first game in the 2 o'clock window, that is the Seattle Seahawks taking on the Arizona Cardinals, where the Cardinals are minus 2.5 point favorites in this particular game. Now, this is going to be an interesting matchup because it's a divisional game, and I think the team that likely gets the win here today, I think likely wins the division as well. This is kind of one of those games where it has a playoff feel to it. If you win this game, you're likely going to make it to the playoffs. Now, granted, there's still a lot of football left to be played, and the team that wins this game could ultimately go on to lose the rest of the games this season, and the opposing team could go on to win the rest of the games. So it's not necessarily over, but I think you control your destiny just a little bit more with this if you win this game. Now, Seattle comes down to Arizona, and obviously when they played back a few months ago, I just want to double check that particular game, but I believe it was just an absolutely rainy, horrific game, and it was where the Cardinals were able to win 16-6. So the Cardinals were able to slow everything down, and I think having Kyler Murray at home in his own environment is going to allow him to play a lot better and a lot more confident. I actually have the Cardinals coming away with the second victory in that matchup. I think they're going to be able to run the ball a little bit more. This is going to be a very fun game to watch, I think. Now, I won't be watching it because my Bears will be playing shortly after that game starts, but this is one of those games where if you're kind of trying to figure out the game to watch in that 2 o'clock hour, this would be a pretty good one to watch. Taking a look at Sterling, he also agrees with me. He thinks the Cardinals will win and will cover the spread. Again, that -2.5 points. I think just kind of what we saw a few weeks ago. I think this Cardinals team, they're good enough to kind of slow everything down. And when they're playing at home, I think they genuinely will be just that little bit better. But again, this is going to be a very, very good game to watch. The Buffalo Bills head into LA to take on the Rams, and the Buffalo Bills are -3.5 point favorites, and I think that feels almost a little bit insulting to me in that regard. I think the Bills are playing some of the best football they have played all year long. I think they have been a team that has just been very, very talented. They have Josh Allen playing at an MVP level, playing like he's never played before. And the Rams have just been so up and down. Their defense is finicky. Their offense sputters a lot at times. Matthew Stafford isn't that same quarterback. So I think this is a fairly simple game for the Bills. I really do. I think the Bills come in, they get the job done. I think the Bills are probably the best team in the AFC right now. They're playing the best football out of all the AFC teams. And I think the Bills know and they understand at this point that they have to win out because they control their destiny. They need to force every other team to go play them in Buffalo during the snowy weather. And we know when the Bills play at home, they are a tough team to beat in December and in January. And we saw that the Chiefs were able to go in last year and ultimately get that win. But you have to imagine that the Bills are likely looking at this going, this is our best way to at least solidify us getting that number one spot. I think they are playing as motivated as ever right now. And I think they go into the Rams and they mop house. They mop house in Los Angeles and just take the Rams and just bully them. Now, however, my counterpart, Mr. Sterling, he thinks the Rams are going to upset this game. This is one of those things where I would love to hear his reasoning for why. He thinks the Rams are going to upset and beat the Bills. I think he might be hoping that it might be a situation of where the Steelers winning their game earlier in the day, this puts them into that kind of second spot position with the Bills. But yeah, he's not here, so we can't ultimately give us said reason why, but nonetheless, moving over to the other 225 game, that is my Chicago Bears heading over to Santa Clara to take on the 49ers. And the 49ers are -3.5 point favorites. This is This is going to be an interesting game. First game is Thomas Brown as the head coach of the Chicago Bears. Now, he does have the interim tag on that, but he's been doing a phenomenal job as the interim OC, calling amazing plays for Caleb Williams. It's going to be interesting to see how he does for the play calling once he gets down there on the field, because he's not going to be up in a booth anymore. He made a joke saying that he would actually like to be the first interim or head coach to call plays from the booth, but he knows he can't do that. But this is going to be an interesting situation. The 49ers, they're battling a ton of injuries. The Bears have showed that they have had some injuries. DJ Moore and DeAndre Swift were on the injury report all week, and they didn't really practice. But everything that I've heard, it's trending that they are likely going to play in this game, which is absolutely huge. If the Bears don't have either of those two guys, that could be a scary situation for them. That could be a tough one to potentially deal with. I would love for the Bears to go in there and win this game. I would love for them to sit down the 49ers and say, hey, we were able to beat you guys when you were broken and down. We would love to steal your head coach. And this is us basically saying, hey, Kyle, you should leave this team and come coach this team. I think Caleb Williams has performed very good these last few weeks, and he's playing some of his best ball, and I kind of expect that to continue. But this is the Bears we're talking about here. We could have a week of where it's just all sorts of positives and this, that, and the other thing. I do have the 49ers winning this game. I do. I have the Bears covering. I think it's going to be a close game. I don't think the Bears are going to lose in a dramatic, unbelievable fashion like they have the last, feels like 6 weeks. I think they're just going to lose kind of a more standard game of where you look and go, man, that was just a good game to watch. And I'm interested to see ultimately if the Bears can pull this one out of the hat. And I hope they do. It's just I don't think they will. However, Sterling, being the more glass half full counterpart to my glass being half empty, he thinks my Chicago Bears walk into San Francisco and get the win. And he has them upsetting the 49ers. And I'm not there yet. I want to hope and think that could potentially happen, and I really hope it does. But I'm also not setting myself up for high expectations. Next game up on our list is our Sunday night game of the week. Another divisional game, this time where we have the Chargers going into Arrowhead to take on the Chiefs. This is going to be a very, very interesting matchup. The Chargers are playing very good football. The Chiefs are not. However, the Chiefs are winning games. The only game they've lost was to the Buffalo Bills, who I think they're playing the best football out of any team in the AFC. This is going to be one of those games where if the Chargers can win this, they are a legitimate contender. And I think we can ultimately say that the Chiefs won't win the Super Bowl. Like, I genuinely think if the Chargers win this game, I think we can say that the Chiefs are not the favorites anymore. Even with how good the Lions have been this year, how good the Bills have been this year, if the Chargers win this game, I think it really puts a dent into the Chiefs and them going into the playoffs. I think they might have one playoff win, or the one playoff home game, I should say. And then they have to travel, man. They're going to have to travel to likely Buffalo. Actually, that's not true. They might have 2 playoff home games, which is going to be good, but then you're going to have to travel. And I think this Chargers team, if they were going to go out there and get the win, they're going to have to use that run game, and they're going to have to allow Justin Herbert to be Superman. They're going to have to allow him to be that otherworldly guy. And I think Jim Harbaugh is going to have this team playing at an unbelievably competitive and high level. But with all that being said, this is the Kansas City Chiefs, man. They have found ways to win. getting closer to the end of the year, this is around that time when we started to see the Chiefs really take off to that next level. They play very, very good football in December. They are a tough team to beat, and this is a divisional game. They've had close games against the Raiders and the Broncos last time they've played them. Kind of sneaking a win against the Raiders. They should have a loss to both the Raiders and the Broncos this year. I do think the Chiefs ultimately win this game, but I do have the Chargers ultimately covering that spread. Sterling, however, has the Chargers winning and upsetting the Chiefs, which I think would be massive. And for our final game prediction of the week, where we have the Cincinnati Bengals taking on the Dallas Cowboys in Dallas. Again, both of these teams, their seasons are pretty much done. Cowboys are done. The Bengals, I don't think they have a chance to make the playoffs. I think they're literally just playing for pride at this point. And if you have a team that is playing for pride, the Cincinnati Bengals are the team that you want to root for, and Dallas has been so horrifically bad at home this year. Bengals are -5-point favorites in this one. I just can't see Dallas keeping up in terms of points. I don't think Cooper Rush has been amazing. I don't think Cooper Rush is amazing. And this Bengals offense, they might allow Cowboys to score 21 points, but the Bengals will be able to score 40. So I think this is a pretty easy game for the Bengals to ultimately go out there and get the victory. And I just don't think the Cowboys are going to have much of a hope in this one. It's going to be the laughable Cowboys. Joe Burrow is going to continue to put up insane numbers this year and just continue on with this season where the numbers that he has, he probably should be the MVP, but since his team is so bad, he's not going to get it. But yeah, Sterling also agrees that the Bengals win and cover this game. That is it for the game picks. Please make sure to like and subscribe and comment on the video for things that you want to see. But till next time, peace.